Hey guys, today I have a very interesting topic that I think you won't find on any other YouTube channel yet. At least I couldn't find anything regarding this. So today I want to talk about Poison Imbuement scaling. So basically how you can increase your damage on Poison Imbuement. Since Poison Imbuement is the most powerful rogue skill, I believe. Most builds do damage with poison damage. So this video is not for beginners maybe. This video is more for advanced players, so rogues that already are in the end game of Diablo, so level 70 to 100. And especially rogues who are playing with Poison Imbuement skill, obviously, and also maybe Twisting Blades or some other variants. Okay, so I think this topic has a lot of potential for testing, and recently I did my own first testings regarding Poison Imbuement scaling with different effects and affixes and Paragon boards and nodes. And I am not the only one so far, so I found one moment. I found one thread in the forum of Blizzard. So the user Esteban have made a thread already like 1 month ago, and he has listed already some very useful things and many insights. And I will try to summarize them for you first. So important to understand in the first place is that in Diablo 4 there's a difference between direct damage and damage over time, but this difference is not so big. So basically all your skills, you have like the most skills are dealing direct damage. So for example your twisting blades, your flurries, your penetrating shots and so far. While you have damage over time skills, and these are usually poison or shadow damage skills, for example. And the main difference is that damage over time does not scale with critical strike damage. So you cannot critical strike with damage over time skills. That's why your poison trap, for example, always will have very low damage because you just never critical strike with it. But basically all the other damage multiplier, they should apply to damage over time effects like poison as well. Um, Nonetheless, some may be bugged because Diablo right now is quite a mess and many things do not work properly. But in theory, it should work like this. So the user Esteban first showed us which things do not scale with Poison Imbuement. So for example, the dagger, the unique dagger condemnation, the unique effect of the dagger, which says like you deal more core skill damage after using combo points. Regarding his research, this aspect does not work with Poison Imbuement. So this dagger has just no, it makes no difference for your poison damage. And also other aspects that improve your core skill damage. For example, the aspect of expectant, also does not work with poison imbuement. So basically, in theory, all core skill damage multiplier should not work with poison imbuement. And this kind of makes sense to me because if you read like the tooltip of poison imbuement, it says that your next imbuable skills, for example, Twisting Blades is a imbuable skill. So these skills deal poison damage and apply a percentage of their base damage. So the base damage basically are the orange numbers that you can read here in the tooltip. So for example, 10,000 to 12,000 damage, and then the returning damage. So this is the basic base damage of the skill. So this makes sense. So all the core skill multipliers that do not affect poison damage. Also, he found out impetus bonus attack does not influence this, and also Edge Master aspect. This is the aspect which gives damage bonus regarding if you have full energy. And this actually doesn't make that much sense to me because, like, you would think that this will increase your damage of all your skills, but according to his research, it seems this is not the case. So this one, I don't know if it's a bug or it's intended, but it does not work. And yeah, he also mentioned that crit damage does not affect poison damage, and this is nothing new. We already knew this since beginning, so like I said, this is the big difference between direct damage and damage over time effects. Okay, so far these are the things that do not increase poison imbuement damage. And then he also mentioned many things that not all of these things he has tested, but these are the things that he assumes they should work with poison imbuement. And basically these are all the other damage multipliers. So like everything in theory should work except these things that are mentioned here. And except damage percentage that here he says any damage that is not tied to an attacker skill. So everything that says like this skill, like I don't know, like we had the example with core skills. So core skill damage 25% more, something like this. This should not increase your poison damage, but everything that is not tied to attack or skill damage should work. For example, you have damage versus crowd control, versus slowed, versus frozen, stunned enemies. You have damage versus close enemies and stuff like this. So all of this additive damage, for example, should work. Okay, so this is so far his testing and also his conclusion. Like he says, okay, the most efficient and effective ways to enhance your poison imbuement damage is vulnerable damage, poison damage, then damage which is not tied to skill attack, like I just said before, and dexterity, since this is your main stat, and yeah, you always make more damage from your main stat. Okay, so I took this as a base, and I really like this Fred and his work so far, but I still had some problems and some unclear things. For example, he mentioned tracker glyph. So tracker glyph is the one that says you have a 33% increased poison duration. But in the tooltip of Diablo 4, if you activate this glyph, then your poison damage, you can see in the game it's increasing from 6 seconds, it will increase to 8 seconds, but the damage number does not increase. So I was not sure if this is a tooltip bug, or this glyph is just not working properly and you just apply less damage over a longer time. So this would not make any sense at all, but yeah, Diablo 4 is a mess, so it could be possible. And also some other things that I will show you next. So I just started my own research. I just beat Lilith. You can watch this video as well if you like. So after beating Lilith, I was in the mood to test some things, and I think Lilith is perfect for testing since she's very tanky, so she will not die immediately from your poison. And you can see, like, yeah, you can adjust your testing values there and directly monitor your numbers. So yeah, I just did some testing on my own with Lilith, and now I will show you my conclusions. So basically I tested 3 things so far. So the first thing I tested is in the Paragon board, you have the legendary node, Tricks of the Trade. And I heard sometimes that like some people believe tricks of the trade also increases your poison imbuement. So I wanted to test this first, and what I basically did is I removed all another relevant glyphs. So I, for example, removed the Bane glyph and like glyphs that can mess up with my data. So the Bane glyph, for example, has a 10% chance to double the damage of poison. So of course I had to remove this glyph. So basically I removed all of this shit, and then I could make a comparison. So with the legendary node, Tricks of the Trade, with the node on, I have made 20 attacks, so 20 poison imbuement attacks with Flurry. And these are kind of the numbers that I get, so I sorted them, and you can see the lowest number I got within these attacks is 1500 damage, and the highest one is 4200 damage. But most of these numbers are more centered, and here you can see this is the average damage. So 2180 is the average of 20 attacks with poison imbuement skills. And I did the same with the legendary node off, and here I also had 20 attacks, and as you already can see, the numbers are very similar, and here you can see the result. So the number is quite higher actually. So this means that with the legendary node on, compared to without the legendary node, I actually lost about 7% damage on average with the legendary node. So this means I even did less damage. But this number is this number is not significant, so it's not a large sample size. Usually it should be much larger, like maybe 100 or even 1000 attacks. But of course, I don't want to invest that much time into it. So I think this number just shows that there's no significant relationship between these two factors or these two approaches. And it's even less damage than without the node. So yeah, for me, this clearly shows the legendary node, like this one, Tricks of the Trade, does nothing for poison imbuement damage ticks. Okay, so this is the first conclusion. The second conclusion is I wanted to test the tracker glyph. Just as I mentioned before, I wanted to be sure if it works properly or not. So I did actually the same. And here the conclusion is even very similar and even closer. So again, the average numbers, damage numbers are very similar. It's only 5% difference between these two. So it again shows to me that there's no significant difference between these two. And then also I compared the poison ticks. So how many poison ticks do I apply with the tracker glyph on and off? And as you can see, with this is actually the wrong direction. So this should be the opposite. So yeah, like this. With the tracker glyph, I do about 16 to 17 ticks, and without 12 to 13. And if you calculate this, then you realize this is exactly 33% longer poison duration than this. So I can say the tracker glyph, even though it has a tooltip bug, it works properly. It just increases your duration and your damage stays the same. So yeah, you just apply more poison over a longer period of time. Is this important for your gameplay? Actually, I think no, because in dungeon runs you usually want to kill your enemies as quick as possible. So I think the only use case for this glyph is if you fight Lilith. To kill Lilith, it could help you because she has just very much life, but in Nightmare Dungeons, I think it's no point to run this glyph. But in the end of the video, I will compare some choices for your Paragon board as well. So yeah, just stay until there. And the last thing I tested so far is close damage. And this is not a legendary node or something, but yeah, I'm talking about the closer glyph. So the closer glyph, my theory was that since cutthroat, like the closer glyph, it increases your cutthroat skill damage. As you can see, in my case, it's 85%. And in my theory, it was like cutthroat skill damage only should increase your cutthroat skills. So, for example, twisting blades obviously is a cutthroat skill, but poison imbuement is not a cutthroat skill. So I thought that, yeah, this glyph boosts the damage of my twisting blades, but not of my poison imbuement. But interestingly, this is not the case. Here you can clearly see I did the same method, this time with 10 attacks instead of 20, because I just realized a big difference from the beginning. So it's not necessary to do more. And here you can see, on average, with this glyph on, I do like 37% more damage in my poison ticks. So 85% cutthroat skill damage increases my poison damage by 37%. And I think this is because of the formula of how additive damage brackets are calculated. So cutthroat skill damage is an additive damage. So these 85% are not really 85%, but much less, and they should be around 30 to 35%. So this number makes sense. But again, I don't know if this is intended actually, because like I said, imbuement skill is not a cutthroat skill. So usually you would expect that this glyph does not increase poison damage, but it seems it does. So yeah, I don't know if it's a bug or not, but so far you should know that this glyph is very good also for poison damage. So these are the three conclusions. I also posted them on the thread. So tracker glyph, the legendary node, and cutthroat damage from closer glyph. These are the three things I have so far. Okay, so let's take a look at the Paragon board. So let's say you are playing with the same build as I do. So I play with the bursting venoms aspect. If it's called like this, I'm not sure. But I'm playing with the aspect which allows me to spam my poison imbuments all the time. So with lucky hits, I can spam my poison imbuement. And in this build, most of the damage comes from poison imbuement, because another good thing about poison is it just stacks. So the damage just increases very quickly, very fast, if you just spam it. So I'm not even sure how exactly this works. I don't think it's additive. It has some multiplicative scaling within the formula as well, I believe. But basically, what you all know, if you spam your poison imbuements, then the damage just explodes. So if you're playing with this bursting venom aspect, then most of your damage comes from your poison imbuement. So your critical strikes with twisting blades, for example, they don't matter that much. Of course, sometimes you can hit like 5 or 7 million with twisting blade critical strike, but I would say this is very much the peak. So most of the time you are critting for like 300,000 to maybe 1 million or something like this. Okay, so yeah, but it's hard to test. It's not easy to test these things. But I think your critical strike damage is much less than compared to your poison damage. So my idea is, and I will test this in the future, I want to make a build which is relying very heavily and very exclusively on poison damage. So my Poison Imbuement will be like the only source of damage basically. And since I will always have it active, it's okay. So now the question is, how do we build our Paragon board? I'm not sure yet, 100%. Like, this is my Paragon board I used for the Lilith kill. I think it's very efficient. I was able to reach 4 legendary nodes. I have 6 glyphs, and I'm reaching most of the nodes I want. But the question is, what glyphs are the best for your poison build? Efficiency, of course, is very important. It just increases your poison damage by 20%. So I would say efficiency is one of the most important glyphs for Poison Imbuement builds. Then, like just I said in the testing, cutthroat damage increases significantly your poison damage as well. So this glyph is also very good. Then we have Bane. Bane's unique effect says you have a 10% chance to double your damage of your poison. So basically this means on average, you increase your damage by 10%. And you also deal quite a lot of poison damage. So this scales obviously as well with your Poison Imbuement. Then we have Turf. Turf says you deal more damage to close enemies. This also increases your poison damage. And also Ambush, if you're playing with traps like I do in my trap build. Then Ambush says you deal more damage to enemies affected by trap skills. So all of these glyphs so far, they should increase your Poison Imbuement damage. And here, this makes sense if you're playing with crowd control and especially with freezing and stunning enemies like I do in my, I call it freezing, twisting blades rogue. So you deal more damage to crowd control enemies and yeah, 20% bonus to stunned or frozen enemies. And I believe these 20% even multiplies with each other if enemies are both stunned and frozen, which is possible with my freezing death trap poison rogue. So this is another build I want to make in the future. Yeah. So these are the glyphs so far that I think are your choice for running high nightmare dungeons. You see that I don't use combat glyph, so one of the most powerful glyphs that rogue players consider is the combat glyph, because it increases your critical strike damage. But like I said, in this build, we don't want to play with critical strike damage, because our poison does not interact with this. Then obviously you will lose the 12% energy cost restore, but if your build is capable of generating a lot of energy, then this is not so important. Also, I'm not playing with Exploit Glyph. The Exploit Glyph is obviously very powerful, but instead in my build I play with Concealment, and Concealment actually has this ability to make enemies vulnerable for 6 seconds, so it's even longer than the Exploit Glyph. And so with my combination of Concealment and my Death Trap, I can make the enemies in the area of Death Trap also vulnerable for 6 seconds. So actually this is the reason why I don't need the Exploit Glyph. But obviously this is also very good, so you can use this if you are playing a different build than me. The Tracker Glyph, as I said, I think it's not important, only for bosses like Lilith. Then you could make an argument of also playing a Kenny instead of something else, because Kenny also increases your non-physical damage, which is basically poison damage. And also you make up to 10% more damage each time you enemies take damage from non-physical sources. But the question is, what glyph will you replace then? I think you could replace the Bane glyph maybe, because yeah, what I don't like about the Bane Glyph is it's very volatile, so it's Bane Glyph, it can mean that you will deal a lot of damage for some time, but then all of the rest you won't feel that damage boost that much, just because it's a very low percentage chance. But I think these two are kind of similar, so Bane and Kenny, yeah, I think they are quite equal on your power level, and it's just a choice of your taste. Then on the legendary nodes, I want to mention this glyph here, Deadly Ambush. You could also just delete this, since you don't need critical strike damage for your poison, as I said. And actually, you should, like, instead for Deadly Ambush and instead of Tricks of the Trade, you should play with another Paragon board, which is Cheap Shot. So Cheap Shot has the Cheap Shot legendary node, and this one increases your damage up to 25% for each enemy that is crowd control. And this is very good if you crowd control the enemies, and actually the Penitent Greaves, so the unique boots that I recommend in all of the heroic builds, these boots are enough to activate this legendary node, so you will make 25% more damage all the time. So this node is much more worth than the others. And the next most important node is this one, Eldritch Bounty, because this basically increases your poison damage by another 20%. And this one is multiplicative, so this means you will increase your whole damage by 20%. So it's not like the closer glyph where it says 85% cutthroat damage, but it's not 85%, it's 34, it's 35, for example. No, this glyph increases your damage by 20%. Okay, so yeah, these are the nodes and glyphs that I would recommend. I will work on the final Paragon board. I don't have it yet. I also need to farm more gold, because the Lilith kill just made me broke. And last things to mention, maybe, here it can be a little bit tricky. Here, for example, the Imbur rare node says you deal 15% more imbued skill damage. And the game, like, there's a difference in the game between imbued skill damage and imbue skill damage. So imbued means the skill that is imbued, so your twisting blades, for example, they will deal more damage. So this is direct damage. If it would say said not imbued but imbue, then this would mean that you are increasing your poison imbue damage. So yeah, it's a little bit tricky here. That's also one of the reasons why I think it's not worth it to take this node, for example, since it just not increases your poison damage. But this node, for example, is quite good, so you increase your non-physical damage, and this is just basically poison damage. So yeah, I think this is it. Yeah, like I said, I will work on this build. I have very high hope, and I think this will increase the rogue damage output by a lot. Also, the idea is, like I can tease you, I think I have this in another guide. I play with exposure and with preparation. So this allows me to basically spam my Poison Imbuement all the time. And also I can spam, I'm spamming stun grenades all the time. And together with my aspects, I am allowed to stun enemies and also freeze them. And stunning and freezing them also increases my damage by a lot if I play with the 60% increased damage to stun enemies aspect. So yeah, this is the build that I will work on, and so far I hope you have a much deeper understanding of Poison Imbuement now. I think this was a very long video again, but I think it's worth it to be very detailed about this, since it's a very mysterious thing with Diablo 4. You have to test all the things by your own, unfortunately. But so I will update you on that and work for my next guide. And until there, I hope you have a nice time. Leave me a like if you like my content, and have a nice day. Goodbye.